If you're an American expat or a digital nomad, then tax season is even more confusing for you than it is for everyone else. American tax laws are not known for being easy to understand, but today I want to give you my top 10 tax tips for expats. That's to make sure that you don't wind up on the bad side of the IRS. Now, before we get started, let me remind you that even though I have researched this and I feel well informed, I am not a tax professional, and more specifically, I am not your tax professional. Please seek advice of a tax expert to better understand anything I'm about to say and to make sure you understand your specific tax situation. Number 1, your passport is the first step in your tax filing obligation. You'll find information regarding U.S. taxes if you look inside your passport. Now, this is my passport right here. I have it. If I turn to the last page, and I'll put up a graphic here in a minute. The very last page there's A, B, C, D, and E. Letter D, U.S. taxes. All U.S. citizens working and residing abroad are required to file and report on their worldwide income. Consult IRS Publication 54, Tax Guide for U.S. Citizens and Resident Aliens Abroad, and there's also a website. Number 2, depending on your filing status and your worldwide gross income from the 2022 tax year, you may be required to file taxes in 2023 if you're an American living abroad. Therefore, if your gross income from all the sources is at least the amount stated in the table on the screen, for individuals under 65 years old, you must file a U.S. tax return. Number 3, no matter where they reside, U.S. citizens are subject to taxation. There are only 2 nations in the entire world that tax their citizens no matter where they are on the globe. The first is Eritrea. Where? I didn't know where that was. I had to look it up. I confess. And the second country that taxes its citizens no matter where they live is the good old USA. As a result, whether you reside abroad or in the US, the rules for submitting income tax returns are basically the same. Therefore, regardless of where you live, all your international income will be subject to US income tax. Thankfully, US citizens living overseas are entitled to tax advantages. Number 4, U.S. expats automatically receive a 2-month filing extension. Notice I said filing. We talk about the deadline to pay in just a moment. The IRS automatically grants expats a 2-month extension to file, giving you this year until June 15th to complete your tax return. Hey, do me a favor, if you like this sort of content, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and also ring the bell so you get notified every time we drop new content. That'll let me know what kind of videos you want to see in the future, and I'll make sure I do those, and it really helps out the channel. Thanks a lot. Number 5, expats generally do not owe U.S. taxes, or very little actually. Now, you might be relieved to learn that most expats do not owe taxes while they are residing abroad. This is due to a few tax perks and exclusions listed on the screen that shield Americans from paying double taxes. So basically a double taxation, so you're paying on your U.S. and your foreign income. However, after those deductions are calculated, if you do owe money, then you must pay your taxes by April 18th, 2023. So remember, if you do not owe, then you have an extension for filing. But if you do owe, you have to pay on time. It's the IRS. Who can figure it out? Number 6, each year expats must complete a few extra tax forms in addition to a standard 1040. Now, I'm not going to cover each one of these, but I will list them on the screen. They may not all apply to your situation, but just be aware that some will, so it's important to find a qualified tax professional that deals with expats. So number 7, the FEIE and the FTC are 2 methods you can use to get around this issue of double taxation. Now, although both approaches have their advantages, there may be some instances when using the FTC alone is actually more advantageous. So first, let's talk about the FEIE, or the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion. So the FEIE allows for foreign earned income. That's income you've earned while working in a different country of up to $112,000 to be excluded from the U.S. expats taxes in 2022. Now this amount does get adjusted, so if you're watching this later in 2023, that amount's going to be higher for 2024 and 25 and so on and so forth. Now, experts can employ two different sort of tests to make sure that they are eligible and that they qualify. The first one is the physical presence test, which means that you spent 330 consecutive days traveling outside of the U.S. within that tax year. So again, from January 1st through December 31. All right, so that would be your tax year. The second is the bona fide residence test, which is that you paid local taxes and were considered a resident for the entire calendar year in your host or your foreign country. So those are the two tests. As long as you qualify for one of those, you can use it. But here's the deal. To be beneficial, the FEIE should be used by Americans living in countries with either no income tax or an income tax rate that is lower than the American rate. If you live in a country that has the same or even higher tax rate, then the FEIE probably isn't your best bet. So in that case, you're going to want to use the FTC, or the foreign tax credit. So people who pay international income taxes can lower their overall U.S. tax obligations thanks to the FTC. Expats are eligible to claim a dollar-for-dollar credit. That's important on their U.S. tax bill for every dollar paid in foreign taxes. So again, the first one was a offset of your income. This is a credit against your taxes. It's a little different, but they both have goods and bad reasons why you want to use that. So just to use some round numbers here on the FTC, if you worked overseas for a foreign company and you owed $20,000 in taxes, you could offset your U.S. income taxes by that same $20,000. I hope that makes sense. It's a lot of stuff to write down and kind of keep track, but it's very important. It's going to make a huge difference, and all expats should be aware of this process. Hey, question of the day. Have you ever had any tax issues while living outside of the U.S.? I'd love to know your stories. Let me know in the comments below. Now back to the video. Number 8, just because you live overseas does not mean that you do not have to pay state tax. There are a few rules about this depending on when you last lived in the state, and each state is different, so you want to check on your state's specific tax regulations. But here are a few things to keep in mind that may indicate whether or not you need to pay state tax. Number 1, if you are considered as having a permanent residence in that state, so a permanent home. Number 2, if you have spent a portion of the tax year residing in that state, you may owe state taxes. And number 3, if you have made any money working in that state. So again, each of these rules can be a little different, and they're not consistent necessarily with the Fed. So you want to make sure that you check the tax experts for your state. Number 9, U.S. expats may need to submit a report of foreign bank and financial account, which is the FBAR, which makes no sense to me because the letters are screwed up, but hey, it's the IRS. It's just the way it is. You must file an FBAR if you held at least $10,000 in overseas financial accounts at any given time during the tax year. Now, this is very important because some countries do require that you make a deposit in a bank in their country to qualify for certain specific visas. So the FBAR is a very common form that expats have to file. And finally, number 10, self-employed expats have a different responsibility that can be its own video all by itself. As a self-employed expat, you need to pay self-employment tax separately after calculating your net profit. It also makes a difference where your company is. I mean, do you own a small apartment building in Lincoln, Nebraska? Or are you running an Airbnb in Puerto Vallarta? Are you a digital nomad living in Thailand, but you're freelancing as a programmer for an American company in California? I mean, it can get a little crazy. There are several different things that you need to consider as an expat entrepreneur, so that you really need to take your time and review your taxes taxes with a qualified professional. Taxes are one of those things that people tend to overlook in their thought process when considering living abroad. In fact, there are many questions that come up when you start this process. So if you want to know more of some of the questions that other people have had before becoming an expat, you should check out our destinations playlist right there. A lot of great Q&A with other expats in there. If you need help narrowing down a country where you can live on a limited budget, then check out our top 5 locations where you can live on just Social Security. I think you'll get a lot of great information from both of those. But in the meantime, until we talk again, keep on trekking.